Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation to be here as speaker. We're very happy to be here today. Does anybody know what language this is?
Esperanto.
Very good, Liz, Esperanto. This is not just the fact that he's established the language that gone her. But he wanted to create a very simple, easy words, like was about 100 years ago. Almost like a secret language, right? Like children sometimes do, but then with a lot more goal. His goal was to create a language for international communication. It's a secondary language that everybody around the world can hear. And let me try to read this to you. Go back actually, before you actually see what it means. Homoi ne estas monsamaitas lingvo, sed lingvo differentias homoi. You already saw what it means, but even if you don't know it, you could probably recognize some of the words in it, right? So people are not different because of language, but language differentiates people, or language gives people an identity. So that was his goal. Part of his goal for this language was to create a politically neutral language, which is for Spanish and English as world languages, to build them up politically neutral. So he wanted to have something that nobody speaks natively. He wanted to erase language barriers with that, bring countries together, and promote peace. So this is about 150 years ago. When he published this language in 1887, he did that under the name Doctor Esperanto, or Dr. Hope. And initially it was quite popular. Within Europe, he was a Polish medical doctor, but he actually grew up in an area of Poland that was back then part of the Russian Federation. And so it was popular in most of Europe, but also in Russia, or in the, I guess it was Russia, was the Soviet Union, it was probably, it was still Russia, a Russian Federation, yeah. So it was pretty popular initially. Then World War II happened, and Hitler saw Esperanto as evidence of a plot, the Jewish plot to take over the world. And he did not want to have anything to do with it. And then even after World War II, it didn't really catch on anymore. Right now, there's probably a few 100,000, maybe 1 million people worldwide that are still speaking it. And it's because it's so easy to learn. But it's never really called on as an international language. And Esperanto, the part of it that's so easy to learn is it consists of 16 grammar rules and about 500 root words. So for example, every noun ends with an O. No exceptions. So doctor, doctoral. Esperanto means really one who hopes. So that's a noun. Previously we saw 2 nouns, right? Lingvo, language. Homo, person. So every noun ends with an O. And every adjective ends with an A. So here's a couple of adjectives. Bona, felicia, bella, ferita, dextra. So they're all based on, like Latin based, right? Or Germanic, a lot of it. So the saying is politically neutral, but it's still based on European languages. So you ready for a little lesson? So I was saying there are 500 root words. So if good is bona, the way it works is that the root words always have like a prefix, right? Something in front of it or after it. It uses the same root word. So if good is bona, bad is malbona. And we have that in English too, function and malfunction. And we have happy and unhappy. So we're also using that in English, but it's not consistent. The nice thing about Esperanto is that there's no exceptions. So, good, bona, bad, malbona. Happy, felicia, unhappy?
Malfelicia.
Malfelicia. Pretty is bella, ugly is?
Malbella.
Close for Rita, open is? Right is extra? Yeah, you're waiting for an exception, right? No, it's not good. I'm serious. So it's really a lot of fun. I've been playing with it on Duolingo for a couple of months. So there's no, I don't speak it. I haven't met anybody else who speaks Esperanto in the first place, so I haven't really practiced it. But even then, we know as linguists that learning a language and speaking a language is not the same. So I've been learning it for a couple of months now, but no way I can speak it yet, unless you are actually immersed in it. And I get that a lot when I tell people that I'm a translator and I'm translating to Dutch. They look at me and I know they're either thinking,
Why?
Dutch? What country is that again? Or they're thinking, why? Doesn't everybody in the Netherlands speak English anyway? And well, they do. If you go to the touristy areas, yeah, and they do. And because we all learn English from pretty young. And when you go to the touristy area, you go to Amsterdam and you ask for directions. Anybody on the street can give you directions in English to the museums, to the coffee shops, to the hotel, whatever you want to go to. But ask a technician to fix or use a complicated machine with an English manual. Ask somebody to have a political conversation in English. Ask somebody to talk to a doctor and explain how they're feeling, where it hurts. They cannot do that in English. They still need people still need their native language. And so there's still plenty of work for me as a translator. And so translators and interpreters are always needed, right? Although our profession is not guaranteed anymore nowadays. We've all seen the headlines, it's one of them. Will machine learning, AI making translators an endangered species? And there's a lot more of those. That by machine translation, the Google launching universal speech, AI, human translators becoming obsolete. But we're not the only ones who see this technology, AI-based changes in our profession, because here at ChatGPT and worse, the last couple of months, radiologists have seen this for years. They are using AI in their profession a lot because AI is good at pattern recognition, and they use that to interpret their X-rays for lung scans and for mammographs. And of course, teachers and professors are going to have to make changes too in the way they assess their students' work nowadays. But it's not all doom and gloom for us and for the professor, even for the radiologists. Because if you look at this is from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, the job outlook for the next 10 years, still 20%, and 40,000 people, I suppose, that is employment change. And there's still plenty of areas where translators and interpreters are needed and are experts. AI can maybe help us in our interpreting and in our translation business. I think the translator of the future is a human-based hybrid, right? It doesn't go away. It's here to stay, and we'll just have to work with it. Now, I do think, though, that in our industry, we really need a little bit more blue sky thinking. Because I've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, so much fear for machine translation. People become defensive. For years, we mocked Google Translate, right? How bad it was. But it's not that bad anymore. So there's this fear, what's going to happen to our jobs? Are we still needed? And I think we need to look at machine translation and AI as a tool. It's just one of those tools, like we have translation memory had tools. When those first started, people were also saying it's going to take over our jobs. But if we think of AI and machine translation as just the tools that we're going to use, and it may actually create more jobs, different jobs. But that's what the future is like. And I haven't always been this positive. I live in a family with 3 engineers. My husband is an electrical engineer. I have 2 sons. They're both in college, both studying engineering. One computer science and one mechanical engineering. But you can imagine when we get together for dinner, they are just the town over, so we do get together for dinner once in a while. What our conversation is like, right? Our dinner conversation. And my background is in science too, so I like it. I don't have a problem with it. But when ChatGPT was in the news earlier this year, January, you You should have seen the initial conversation. Those boys were, and not just the boys, my husband boy as well. They were excited. They were super excited. And I was skeptical. I was like, what's this going to do to the society when computers, machines take over stuff? And so I asked them, aren't you worried then about your own jobs? Because ChatGPT can code. You ask it to write the code in Python or in C++, and it, boom, a couple of seconds, it's right there. And they said, no. They said what I just said. I got it from them, actually. We're going to have a lot more jobs. It's going to create jobs. It's going to be different, but those AI is only going to take over it's going to do all the boring stuff for us. And we need to specialize. And if you specialize, then you can actually benefit from it. Then use it to your advantage. And so, since then, I started looking into it. And I thought, okay, well, yeah, it's not going anywhere, so let's accept it, adapt to it. So let's go back to this picture here. The title is Writing the Way, How to Navigate and Embrace Changes Without Getting Wet. That's not really realistic. You can't serve without getting wet. So I should say, probably better, how to navigate and embrace changes without drowning or without falling off your surfboard. So how many of you surf? I don't surf.
Nope.
Well, you probably watch people surf, right? You know what it is, what it's like. So they sit on their surfboard, when you sit on your surfboard when you're a surfer, and if you just look in front of you to the beach, you're just popping up and down, you're not going anywhere. That wave will just pass you. And you're not catching the wave. What you need to do as a surfer, you need to be prepared. You need to sit or lie on your belly on the surfboard, look behind you. And when you see that wave come, you start paddling, right? And so you get prepared, and then when the wave is there, you jump on your surfboard, and you try to stay on the surfboard to ride the wave. So if you compare that to technology in our life, we need to look behind us, and we need to be prepared. And so let's go back to, how far can we go back? Machine translation, 1954, this is the Cold War. The first machine translation demonstration of machine translation was the Georgetown IBM experiment. And this is actually Georgetown University here in Washington, DC. And their experiment was a machine that translated 60 sentences from English into Russian. Because again, it's the Cold War. So it used 6 grammar rules. It was rule-based and 250 vocabulary words. That's all. But it was very exciting back then, I think. I don't know. I wasn't alive. No, none of us probably were back then. So then that was 1954. Then in the 1970s, the company Systrom was established, I think it was 1968, in California. And it was contracted by the US government, by the US Air Force, also to create the translation machine from English into Russian again. And later it also worked on the space mission, Apollo-Soyuz joint space mission between the US and Soviet Union. They still use rule-based. So rule-based means if this, then that, right? That's how it kind of worked. It wasn't very good, but it was good for that time. Then IBM continued developing their machine, and they changed to statistical machine translation, and that uses probability. So you have your segments, you have your English, and you have your Russian, and then it's probably words and phrases and whole sentences, and then based on probability of what is used most before, it would create the translation. Much better than rule-based, but still not very good. Until 2006, and we probably, a lot of us will remember that, when Google published or created this machine, free Google Translate, on web-based, right, on the internet. And it was launched in 12 languages. And the interesting thing is that everything had to go through English. So if you wanted to translate French to German, it was first translated French into English and then English into German. It's only later that they did the other languages. And so Google initially also used statistical machine translation, and only in 2014 it changed that to neural machine translation. And that's when people were saying, whoa. And that's when we started feeling, where's this going? And then in 2017, eBell, which is a German company, also came on the market with their neural machine translation, and you probably have heard of that company too, because they have also a free version online where you can go to eBell.com, but they're also accessible through the Green website. So you see that it continues there, 2017. And they are, well, I'm probably talking to, you probably know just as much about it as I do, but neural machine translations, they get trained and they learn, and it only gets better and better and better. So it just keeps coming, and it keeps going. So let's go back to that surfboard. Now we look behind us. We saw the wave coming. It's here. It's here to stay. Are you writing it? Right? Are we writing the machine translation or the AI wave? For years, I thought when I went to conferences, also the ATA conference, for example, there were sessions about machine translation, but it was all businesses and corporations and agencies that were using machine translation, and I thought, what about us? So I'm not talking about agencies or private companies sending you machine translation output and asking you to post-edit it. I'm asking, are you actually using it in your business, in your work? Because all these tools have integration. They have options to integrate with DeepL and with Google and with RWS. So the options are there. They are actually there for us to use. But not everybody is using them yet, and partially it is because they're worried about confidentiality and about privacy. I even have one agency I work for a lot, and I've worked for a long time, and I do medical devices, right, and IT, and kind of like technical translations. And they tell me, they have told me, and they remind me once in a while, they say, really, we do not want you to use machine translation. Do not use it. So if a client tells you not to use it, then don't use it. Don't do it secretly. Because the reason they are asking you not to use it, telling you not to use it, is because they tell their clients that they're only using human translators. And if they send their work to you, then, and you're using machine translation, then you're violating the contract that they have with their clients. Or another thing is that they may have very confidential information. There might be patient confidentiality. There might be legal confidentiality. Maybe they have translation materials for devices that aren't even on the market yet. And so they really do not want to take the risk that that stuff goes out to the third party because they don't know how we're using it. So always look at the contract that you signed, even if it's a contract 20 years ago or 5 years ago. If it says the client tells you not to use machine translation, then don't do it. Then just don't work for that client if you want to keep using it. So let's look at some of these privacy and confidentiality agreements, in the terms and conditions. So Google Translate, and I do not, absolutely not recommend any professional translator to ever use that. It's perfectly fine if you just want to know what something means. Don't use it professionally, because your content, even though it says your content remains yours, they do, or they may use your content. They may use it to modify, create, derivative work, so you really do not want to deal with that at all. And there is a perfectly good alternative. There is this subscription, Google API. And Google API, so you pay for that. But that it has a plugin, and it plugs the right in, it integrates with your cat tools. So while you're working on your cat tool, you get these machine translated output, and you don't have to use it. You can just use it as a reference. You can use it as alternative translation, or you can directly put it into your translation and post-edit it yourself. It really increases your productivity. So for the API, it does not use any of your content, anything other than translation, and you'll just have to do what they're doing. They don't use it to train or improve their Google Translate features, and they do not claim any ownerships. So there's a couple of more, and these are just a couple of examples. I know there are other Amazon, Microsoft even too, and I don't need to mention those. So this is AWS, and it's the one that I personally use the most because I use File Studio. I've always used that from the beginning, and that's just something that my client asked me to use, and I purchased it, and that's what I'm using. And Prado's Studio, it used to be STL, and now it's RWS. And so they have access to RWS language model. And it's right there. I think if you need to have 2019 or about. You pay, of course, I paid for the program itself. And I believe RWS is going also to subscription method right now. So you're going to pay for the language file for the machine translation. So they're also saying none of the source material will ever be used to train our materials, and it's only being used for those dictionaries, because those are my dictionaries. So when I use it, I can decide not to use the dictionary, or I can create my own dictionaries for the work that I'm doing. So I'm helping, I'm actually training my own machine translation, or my own translation machine to give output that is better suited for my kind of work. Keepel has a plugin that works with head tools, and for the same thing, it only uses the data that you submit for their execution of the translation. It's only to create any of the models. So I asked the other day. I was watching. Let me take a sip. I watched a YouTube video. It was a keynote address by Gerhard Leonhardt. He's a German futurist. This is the keynote address for Microsoft Envision 2021. It was in Bucharest, in Romania. And the keynote speaker was saying that this was actually a keynote about technology, not about translation. He didn't have anything to do with translation, and the title was about humanity versus technology. I'm gonna look at my cheat sheet, but it's humanity versus technology, or technology versus humanity. That was the title of his keynote address. And he was saying, we are going to see more changes in the next 20 years than we have seen in the past 300 years. And this is about technology. So think about this. We're going to see more changes in the next 20 years than we've seen in the past 300 years. And then I thought, wow, that is technology, but that's going to affect us. Translators and interpreters. So what will our life, really our professional life, look like 20 years from now? What are we going to be doing? And I thought, well, let's ask ChatGPT. Knows everything. So I went to, before that I had already played with it a little bit. I went to openai.com and I asked the question, have you all played with it? You should go, it's free. Right now it's free, you better play with it now because I'm sure it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to stay free. You go to openai.com and you enter your email address, and then you get an account and you can ask questions as many as you want. So I asked, what will translators and interpreters be doing 20 years from now? And I got this nice 300-word essay. Very well written. So I read through it, and then on the bottom there is a button that says regenerate. So if you don't like the answer, you can regenerate, you get a new one. You can just keep doing that until you actually get the But so I did that a couple of times just to make sure that it was not just giving me something. And I did that a couple of times. I got different answers, written slightly differently, but pretty much the same on that. So okay, well that's the stuff that OpenAI has trained the Claude It's all the information from the internet, lots of books and lots of papers, and it's amazing how much information they use to train OpenAI. So what you read is the trend that's happening. So anyway, this is what it said. It started off with a little disclaimer, and it said, I'm just an AI language model, and I cannot predict the future, but I am happy to give you offer you some speculations. Yeah. So then they gave me 5 things, 1 through 5. So the first one was, we're going to see an increased use of machine translation. Well, that is not surprising to say. But the nice thing, when they gave me these 5 paragraphs with a little bit more information, I'm not going to give you all that because it's way too much reading, but the first one was increased use of machine translation. And it said that although there's going to be more machine translation, human translators will still be needed as experts. So that was nice to read that. Number 2 was specializing in niche fields, and I'm coming back to that later. The integration of AI tools in translation and interpreting. And that is not just the machine translation, but also things like text-to-speech, voice recognition, those kind of AI tools as well. We're going to see more and more and more of that. And then I'm sure there are going to be AI tools in the next 20 years that we can't even think of right now. I don't know what, because it's not there yet. We don't know yet. Maybe something is going to be in our brains, we don't know. I'm sure there's going to be more AI tools. So we're going to have all those AI tools, those new ones, we need to be prepared. Okay? We need to look behind them, we need to educate ourselves, we have to be prepared and use them if they are available to us. There's going to be an increased use of remote interpreting. And I don't interpret, I'm not an interpreter, but I'm sure those of you who do, you've seen that during the pandemic, and it's here to stay. Right? They're still using it. So yeah, a lot of that. And then the 5th one, I was actually a little surprised about that. That's why I regenerated, but it came back all the time about this cultural awareness. That because it said as the world becomes more globally interconnected, and not just the way it is right now, but more developing countries are going to be more engaged in more emerging markets. It is important for translators and interpreters to have cultural awareness, cultural sensitivity, and become more knowledgeable about other cultures, as well as just our own. And then in the end, the little paragraph at the bottom of the essay was, overall the role of translators and interpreters is likely to evolve, blah, 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 but again, human expertise in language and culture will remain crucial for accuracy and for effective communication of languages and cultures. So that was ChatGPT. So now, remember we're still in our surfboard. The wave is here, we are writing it, now we need to write it out. We don't want to fall off. We don't want to get wet. Now we get to the not getting wet part. How can we stay afloat? How can we use this technology for our own benefits? Well, always keep learning. Keep learning, stay up to date on technology. And actually that same keynote address by this German futurist, he also mentioned, and he was a German himself, and he was saying, okay, he was saying, you know the Tesla Gigafactory, right? That was, I don't know if you know this, but anyway, Tesla built a Gigafactory in Germany, close to Berlin, and it just opened last year. And he was saying, that was the first time that someone, Elon Musk, right, came to Germany to tell Germans how to build a car. And he said, that's what you get if you don't pay attention. Germans were there, were like, you know, we're the experts in car manufacturing, we don't have anything to worry about. And there was Elon Musk on his surfboard. Yeah, remember this Tesla Gigafactory. So yeah, always keep learning, keep looking around, and make sure that you stay up to date. Speaking of learning, just the other day I took a webinar, I attended a webinar through the ATA medical division, and it was on Windows 11 tips and tricks. Wow. What is now, Windows 11, it's just your operating system. It works in the background and it makes sure that all my programs are working. What is in Windows 11 that I can use or learn? But I was curious about it, so I attended the webinar, and it was amazing how much I learned, because I didn't know that Microsoft actually has all these plugins that you can download to increase your productivity on the computer, and all these shortcuts. We all know Control F, Control S, Control V, Control C, and there's all those shortcuts, but there's a lot more shortcuts. With the Windows, you know that Windows button? That nobody ever do that. But then you click on that Windows dot, and you get emojis. And you do Windows E, and you get all these E's with all these different accents. And you just choose from it. You don't have to use ASCII codes. I'm always typing in ASCII codes to get an A with an accent, or an E with a umlaut, or a U with an umlaut. You don't have to use that. So those things that really help you in your productivity, it's maybe nothing to do with AI, but it's technology. And if you keep an open mind and you go to those webinars, you attend those webinars, wow, it can help you in your productivity, and that way you can stay competitive with machines. You need to be better than the machines. Right? So specialize in something that you enjoy learning about. I just said I'll come back when ChatGPT talked about the niche skills, or the niche area to specialize in. Sometimes translators and interpreters say, well, I have a degree in linguistics, in translation, in interpreting, but I don't really know. I mean, how do you specialize in something? You really don't have to have a degree to specialize in something. I specialize in medical crisis. My degree is not medical. So you start with something that you like, something that you're interested in, and then you educate. You don't have to go back to school and get a degree in it. You can go to Coursera, take a couple of classes, and then don't say that you're an expert in something if you don't know anything about it yet. But you can just start listing it on your resume, you can start listing it on your LinkedIn profile as a field of interest, not a field of expertise. Because you don't know anything until you've actually done some translations and you've done some education. But I know a translator who is specializing in cannabis translation.
In what?
Cannabis. Marijuana. And her expertise is actually legal. Doing patent translations and legal stuff. And so, but she was interested in cannabis. So she met another translator who has a degree in chemistry. And so they matched up, they got together and they said, if you do the chemical part or the sciencey part and I do the legal part of cannabis, then together we are experts, right? So now they have a website, I think it's called cannabistranslators.com or something like that. They are experts in cannabis translation. So if you have an interest and you educate yourself, you don't have to know everything about that topic. You can also work with other translators. Join a professional association.
Absolutely.
Because machines are not members of professional associations. So that's another way of you to distinguish yourself from a machine. You can say, I'm a member of ATA, I'm a member of Encarta, I'm a member of Najid. Machines are not. And we had a nice presentation this morning about ATA and all the professional development that they have to offer, and they do. It's pretty amazing. Just that Windows 11 tricks and tricks. That was an ATA webinar. And I think it was even free if you're a member of that division. So anyway, join a professional association, become certified. Machines are not certified. You can become certified. ATA translators, CHI, Salesforce certification. I couldn't list them all, but any certification, again, is a way to distinguish yourself from the machines and develop skills that complement automation, if you want. You can specialize, you can learn about DTP, desktop publishing, and you can say, I can do that too. I'm a translator, I'm an interpreter, but I can also do DTP. Maybe you're the expert, remember, we are the experts. So maybe you can help Google, Amazon, Sistrang, Microsoft help train their machines. We are the language security experts, tool training. Think about it, all those new tools that are going to be developed, that they need training for that as well. So I think it's a good idea, or I know it's a good idea. And rather than just sitting on this report and just let it go past, dive into it and keep learning, keep developing yourself. So I'm going to end today with a little story about vanilla. And it's almost lunch, and it's really good for all of us. So vanilla, I read this story on a blog post on the ATA website. It was a semi-newcomer these days. It's a blog for new translators. And there was an article by Stell, no. Her name is French, and I probably mispronouncing it, but Christelle Maginot. She wrote an article about the future of translators, the future of freelancers. And she used an analogy with vanilla, because vanilla has been very, very popular for hundreds of years. And it is a very tedious and a very expensive way to make it. It's very time-consuming. I think they're even doing pollination because there are no many bees, or in the area where it grows, anyway, there is a story about the bees as well, and so I believe they don't even have the bees in the area where they grow this. So it's time-consuming, and it is time-consuming and what's the word? Labor-intensive. That's the word I'm looking for, and that makes it so expensive. So about 150 years ago, again, at the end of the 19th century, scientists found a way to synthetically derive vanillin. Vanillin is the chemical that makes vanilla its flavor and its aroma. So they were able to create vanillin synthetically in the lab, and they derived it from petroleum, wood coal, even cow dung. But it was so much cheaper than the natural vanilla that people started using artificial vanilla. For years, in the 1950s, 60s, almost everybody was using artificial vanilla instead of the natural vanilla. But the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, we see more of an emphasis on all natural, organic, healthy foods. So now there's a comeback. There's a comeback of natural vanilla, and people are prepared to pay for it. They're okay with that because they want to do stuff. Right? So that is what I'm hoping, I'm thinking that maybe the moral of the story is that after this, if we can endure this technology-driven wave, the changes, that maybe one day the world will realize that they're actually missing out on the good stuff, and that they are missing out on the specific qualities that only human translators and interpreters can offer, like critical thinking, cultural sensitivity, human smile, respect for the original text, creativity, and above all, the love of languages we use. That's my presentation. Thank you. We have 2 minutes before lunch. If you have questions, then I'm also here. Thank you for the skill. I can answer 1 or 2 questions, and then if you have any other questions, then I'm here for the day. Thank you so much. Questions?
Well, I always have something to say.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've been in this wonderful profession for not as long as some of you, but about over 20 years, and I've seen the changes, and I've been writing some of the ways, and my motto is, I do what I love what I do. I fell into it by chance, and I couldn't be happier. there's one thing that I have to say while the wave is going on, and that is, do not fall into the pitfalls of being intimidated when they tell you, you have to take this job, or if you find yourself being asked to do a job that you don't feel comfortable, you don't know the field, you don't think you should do it, it's okay to say no also. You have your niche, you have what you love, you know what you can do. Don't be intimidated by saying no because you don't know the technology, because you don't know what to do. It's okay to say no and go with what you feel you're doing well. So that is an extremely important lesson that I've done and followed. So something else will come along.
Yeah.
No matter what your language and how rare it is.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with you. It's actually good to say no. It's better to say no. If you don't feel comfortable, don't see an imposter, don't know, I'll just figure it out. No, it's better to say no. I get questions too for fields that I don't know anything about. Say, can you please do it? I don't really translate.
But you speak Dutch, you should be able to do
Yeah, but
it.
I know. Anything legal and stay away from because I don't know.
I don't do
And then you
IT.
end up doing a bad job and it's not.
Right, I don't touch IT. Don't go near it.
Yeah, everybody has their own comfort level, I think. Any other questions?
If you serve less of
Yeah.
a Christian who's also not to stay afloat with any change, also remembering to enjoy it, actually get to enjoy the ride. And this might be like a woo, exciting, and then, and then kind of jump on for the war deepness.
Yeah. Okay, one more.
I really appreciate how you share the trend predicting many years to come, because language companies are already transitioning by providing translators for the documents in Word, but no, telling them to go online, log into a MOQ website or Trado's website. That's a transitional time now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anyone?